Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Outspoken and sorry, hair issues. And I'm here today to read to you my latest essay and tell you about something really, really important going on in Brooklyn. Um, so you'll know all about it as I read you my Substack essay. But the bottom line is we have the chance to support the first really serious pro-reinstatement candidates in Brooklyn, or the first serious candidates who really could be elected, who could take the thousands of New York City and Brooklyn cops and firefighters and police officers and teachers and emergency EMTs who were mandated in 2021, lost their jobs, lost their retirements, lost their tenure if they were teachers, lost their benefits, lost their future, had to struggle to feed their kids or to pay their mortgages, haven't been reinstated. Most people don't know this. They haven't gotten their jobs back. They remain laid off, essentially. They're asked to sign away all their rights if they're going, in order to get their jobs back, in order to be reinstated. And they've never, this is part of the mind-blowing thing, they've never had their day in court. They've never had due process. And so this is incredible. And, I'll read you my essay about why it's kind of especially incredible. There's a hard fought mayoral race going on right now in New York with a star, a new star who's been minted, Zohran Mamdani, by the Democrats. He has not committed to reinstate and compensate our first responders and our teachers. And so there are two candidates whom I've interviewed, Athena Clark and Louis Caro, who are running for Brooklyn City Council. And they both have committed to reinstate and compensate the first responders, the teachers, the people who were mandated. And Zohran Mamdani, who's running as a man of the people, hasn't. So it's an incredible situation. I want to disclose that Daily Clout is running sponsored content by Athena Clark's supporters. But that being said, it's an unbelievably historic, important race. And these are really extraordinary young people, objectively. So I just want to read you this essay. And, before I launch in, I just want to say, we have the chance to do something really special, really important for the mandated firefighters and cops and teachers and EMTs of New York. And that is to actually, whether you live in Brooklyn or New York or whether you don't, it doesn't matter. You can donate to help them by supporting Athena Clark's candidacy. So I'll read to you, how to do that at the end of this essay. But it's very, very, very important because, they don't need charity. They're not asking for charity. They need leadership that will react to this historic injustice. All right, so let me call that up before I even start reading, and website, and then I can tell you where to send help to. Here you go, where you can send help to the first responders in New York. Wow. All right, well, let's start with this. Mason Harris, before we even jump right in, it's interesting, says, Naomi, you used to be such an objective person back in the day, and now you're simping for quite possibly the most destructive president we've had in the history of this country. What the hell happened to you? Well, I'm simping for the first responders in New York City, bravest for choice, finest for choice, the teachers for choice, the people who kept me and my kids safe, and put their bodies between us and harm's way, and the 10 million people who live in New York City. If you're mugged, if you're, God forbid, raped, if you're burglarized, you call the cops in New York, right? If your house catches fire, you call the firefighters. Your kids, if they go to public school, they're taught by the teachers. If you have a heart attack or stroke, it's the EMTs who come to get you. These are brave, dedicated people. And instead of treating them with respect and honor in the post 9/11 New York City, by the way, they're being trafficked. Their bodies were trafficked, and they're being treated with such unbelievable injustice. So sure, if you want to get mad at me for standing up and doing everything I can to support those people and to tell you about a new generation of leadership in Brooklyn that actually cares about them, be as mad at me as you want. You know, I would have been a Democrat my whole life. I don't even believe in labels because I'm a former political consultant, and I know that both sides are, you know, as corrupt as they want to be at any given time. But it's the Democrats who are ignoring the first responders in New York and in Brooklyn. It's the Democrats who are running a candidate, Zoran Mamdani, who isn't even talking about reinstating them or promising to reinstate them. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. It left me. So, you know, I agree that President Trump has his flaws. You know, Joe Biden wasn't even conscious, apparently. Nobody's perfect, but I literally cannot support right now in my own city where I live, in my own state where I live, leadership that locked kids up, you know, for 2.5 years, that made people like me eat in the gutter like an animal because we weren't allowed to walk into restaurants if we were not vaccinated with an experimental injection, and to this day are not reinstating the first responders of New York. So I hope that answers your question. And now let's go to the essay. So as I'm reading, I want you to know that you can go to Clark for City Council. And it's 2025 clarkcitycouncil.com. And again, this is, you know, one of the two young, again, lifelong Democrat, walked away, re-registered as a Republican because of the issue that she needed to represent. 2025 clarkcitycouncil.com. Reinstate and compensate. It's right there on her website. And if you care about, again, whoever you are, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, if you care about New York's heroic first responders and teachers being treated with minimal fairness and human rights, please donate to her as I'm speaking. All right. Okay. So let's go to this essay, which is called Democrats Winning a Battle but Losing the War. And then the subheadline is A Revolution Brews in Brooklyn. I've been a Democrat my whole life until I walked away in 2021 because it was a Democratic administration that turned America evil and that turned my own life unconstitutionally upside down. I hope that answers the first question. I have never looked back except to marvel at how day by day, policy by policy, today's DNC, Democratic National Committee, seems ever more determined to destroy its party's storied legacy, as well as its own ability ever to win another race. The DNC is pursuing a wholesale wrecking ball destruction of everything that made people want to vote Democratic in the first place and to send money to Democratic candidates. It trashes its heritage of speaking up for marginalized groups, for the concerns of communities of color, Black and Hispanic voters, for unionized workers, for cops and teachers and firefighters, for ordinary Americans who struggle to pay bills, people who, as Democratic candidate and later President Bill Clinton used to say, quote, work hard and play by the rules. How can a party burn up so visibly and so readily so much of what we used to call political capital? There is a revolution brewing in New York City and its boroughs, and it just may show a shift that can transform the nation. New leaders are arising who simply cannot call themselves Democrats. This is due to self-inflicted wounds by that party in the form of lunatic and corrupt policies and critical abandonments from 2021 to the present. Lunatic policies, here are some. Support the rights of gay and lesbian people and of other sexual minorities not to face legal discrimination. Sure, that is a no-brainer. Take that consensus to a bizarre new level and insist on interjecting biological males into women's sports, endangering women physically and destroying Title IX protections, then place biological males into female spaces such as bathrooms and changing rooms, prisons and mental institutions. Who thought that that policy would have widespread support? What percent of the electorate has that deliverable at the top of its list? Speak up for legal immigrants to be treated as fairly as anyone else? Absolutely. Those are traditional democratic values. But champion the ingress to our nation of 15 to 30 million people who broke our laws in order to be here and then shower ostentatious benefits upon them, ranging from cash cards to 4-star Midtown New York City hotel stays that our American elders and veterans and single parents can never afford for themselves? How can the advisors sitting around the Democratic campaign tables not game out what we used to call the optics of that situation? How does that help any Democrat run and win? Defund the police. Who thinks that that was a good idea? A winning policy. Offer guidance in a public health crisis, sure, but force thousands of New York City teachers, cops, and firefighters, and city workers of all kinds to take into their bodies against their will an experimental injection that everyone sentient now knows can be damaging or sterilizing or lethal. What are the odds that that will work out long term? Deny religious exemptions, really? There are 36,000 cops in New York City and 19,000 NYPD staff. There are 11,000 firefighters and 4,500 EMTs, that's emergency medical technicians, in New York City. There are 77,000 teachers in New York City. So a total of 147,400 New Yorkers in the front lines of New Yorkers' lives and of their kids' well-being were mandated with the experimental injection. What if they get sick? What if they die? What if they know others who are getting sick and dying? Who wants to own that catastrophe electorally? The DNC does. To this day, first responders in New York City who are mandated do not have their jobs back. They do not have due process. They did not get their day in court. The people on whose bodies the city runs were betrayed. Who isn't sorry? The DNC. Who isn't offering to reinstate and compensate these workers? The DNC's new star, the new AOC, New York State Assembly member Zoran Mamdani. He is a poster child for the corruption of the DNC and its betrayal of first responders and communities of color, traditionally stalwart groups in the Democratic base. Mamdani is to the manor born, a Bowdoin College graduate, son of the glamorous Indian filmmaker Mira Nair. Mamdani's family lives in Uganda, where Mamdani was recently married. Indian media are reporting this event as a, quote, lavish Uganda wedding bash. Quote, New York City mayoral frontrunner and current Queens Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani celebrated his recent marriage with a 3-day private celebration at his family's high security estate in Uganda, reports DNA India. Now, what I'm going to try to do is share the screen so you can see that image, which is Mamdani in Uganda with his bride or wife now, Rama Duwaji, in their gated estate. And now you can see in New York City media, in contrast, Mamdani poses, I mean, you've just got to laugh, in a hoodie on the subway. Can you see all of that? Yes, you can. There he is. So trust fund millennials in gentrified neighborhoods in New York are salivating about Mamdani. In a gesture, voting for Mamdani wipes away the guilt of white privilege, no matter that he himself is more privileged than almost anyone in New York's 5 boroughs. Mamdani is a true socialist candidate. He offers to make New York life, quote, affordable, free transit for all, government-run grocery stores, which worked so well in the Soviet Union, frozen rents. It is a seductive appeal. New York City is expensive, and Mamdani can hope that people under 60 do not remember what socialism actually did to those suffering under its yoke. His candidacy definitely depends upon no one asking where all the money is going to come from, or noticing that when the government pays for it, it is taxpayers who actually pay. Headlines from Politico to Newsweek are broadcasting the fact that Mamdani polled at 50%, far above his competitors. But read the not so fine print, as Politico's and Newsweek's editors should have done more carefully. Quote, our independent poll, the first in this cycle to be offered in 4 languages and to drill down into national origin and religious denomination, makes one thing clear. Black union households, young Jews, South Asians, East Asians, Latinos, and New Yorkers in every income bracket are all on the same Zoran Mamdani bus, and it's headed in the direction of the Democratic Party's future, said Amit Singh Baga, the principal of Public Progress Solutions and a veteran of federal, city, and state government. Baga's firm designed and analyzed the poll along with Adam Carlson's Zenith Research. And I put italics here. It was funded through private donations to Baga, who advised Mamdani's campaign during the primary on setting up an administration, and was fielded by Verisight, end quote. Link to the poll. So, like, can you tell what's wrong with this, guys? Who's going to be first in the comment to tell me what's wrong with what I just read to you? I mean, a 7-year-old can tell me what's wrong with what I just read to you. Okay? So a poll handpicked the most likely Mamdani voters, left out the likely Mamdani non-supporters. His donors funded the poll, and legacy media is calling that a win. Both polling and news reporting could not be more corrupt than this. In contrast to Mamdani and his theatrical structure of institutional alliances, a new generation of very different leaders in New York City is also running for office. These young men and women had very different life experiences from Mamdani's. They were not born to wealth or privilege. Their families do not live on lavish estates in foreign countries. The corrupt institutional machine of New York City politics is not helping them. The legacy media of New York City are not championing them. Some of these new leaders have walked away from the Democratic Party. They have re-registered as Republicans, which is in itself newsworthy. But these are not your grandma's country club Republicans. And now I'm going to share my screen so you can see Athena Clark. Athena Clark, a New York City teacher who was mandated out of her job when she refused to take the experimental injection, the daughter of immigrants from Jamaica and the West Indies, and a mother of 1, is running for city council in Brooklyn's District 46. Disclosure, Daily Clout will run sponsored content from her supporters. She has a BA and an MA in education, specializing in children with disabilities. For 7 years, Clark worked as a tenured teacher in the New York City Department of Education. But in 2021, the city implemented a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. When Ms. Clark refused it, she was terminated from her job without any court hearing, which is a violation of New York State education law. This trauma led her to decide to run for city council and to seek reinstatement for first responders and teachers, among other planks on her platform. Unlike Mamdani, she is not promising free everything. One of her slogans is "Stop the Socialists." I interviewed Clark, and it was a different experience from interviewing a seasoned politician. She spoke from the perspective of a teacher and of a mom. She talked about the kids injured developmentally. And by the way, this is the first politician I ever heard from who's talking about this. Injured developmentally from being kept out of school for months, children alone in a room, socially isolated, staring at monitors. She talked about how kids with speech disabilities could not learn how to pronounce the sounds L or th, without seeing their teachers' mouths, which were hidden behind masks. Her platform has other grassroots concerns. Parental rights is one of them. She's tackling the delicate issue of parents being unaware that children are exposed at public schools to sensitive content, often without their consent. She promises to take on the bureaucracy. Brooklyn often simply changes zoning and imposes drug treatment clinics, homeless shelters, mental health facilities, and other problematic institutions into local neighborhoods, especially in lower income areas, without any local buy-in or approval process. Clark promises to end that. She will also, quote, reinstate and compensate the terminated city workers who were mandated and who lost their jobs when they refused the vaccine. Louis Chiaro is another Brooklyn-born and raised next-generation leader. He is running for Brooklyn City Council District 38. He is sort of an anti-Mamdani. And I'm going to now share the screen so you can see Louis Chiaro. There we are. His website is startlingly direct. Quote, "You just want to get to work without getting stabbed or burned alive," end quote, it reads. Quote, "There is no democratic or Republican way of cleaning the streets," end quote, it notes, quoting legendary New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. And there's Louis Chiaro. And you can see some of his platforms there. Chiaro's platform is not the traditional Democratic or Republican platform. He, like Clark, objects to the distribution of mental health and drug treatment addiction clinics throughout Brooklyn. Quote, "No new shelters or drug clinics. These facilities have been crammed into our community, with few opened in wealthier neighborhoods like Tribeca or Soho." I know that's true. Sunset Park alone has seen a 68% increase in felonious assaults and a 35% increase in rape in 2024 when compared to the last 14 years. And that's NYPD CompStat 2024. End quote. Chiaro also rejects the role of many nonprofit organizations, which he argues tend to want to manage poverty and homelessness forever, justifying their own budgets rather than to actually solve those problems. I interviewed Chiaro as well. He is as passionate as Clark with the grumpiness. I liked this about him. It was kind of cool, with the grumpiness of a young man who has seen firsthand in his own neighborhood. He is a Brooklyn native, though a Columbia University graduate, everything that does not work. Chiaro said that Black and brown young people in Brooklyn see that good entry-level service jobs have been sent overseas and that illegal immigrants have been mobilized by Uber and DoorDash and other corporations to take the delivery jobs that used to be open to them. And by the way, as someone who lives in Brooklyn part of the time, I know this is true, and it's quite scary because these especially immigrants from Latin America, have been deployed by DoorDash and other delivery services on the sidewalks, on e-bikes on the sidewalks, and they're not getting ticketed, though that's illegal, right? So there's some sort of pull at the level of City Hall or the City Council. And it's terrorizing elderly people, elderly Americans, Americans with disabilities, parents with children. It's very frightening. Caro calls for the training of the young Brooklynites, young American Brooklynites, in IT, robotics, and AI, the skills of the future, as well as in high-paid trades, plumbing, electrical, construction. Caro told me that some of the angriest Brooklynites from whom he hears are Latino voters who arrived here the right way and spent years and thousands of dollars getting their green cards and their citizenships legally. They are furious at the Democrats for ushering in the millions who have, as they put it, quote, jumped the line illegally. The interviews I had with Clark and Caro made me consider how badly and unethically the DNC has bungled the relationship with many Black and brown voters, how actually racist the DNC has been and continues to be. This tactic of throwing telegenic brown people with inch-deep qualifications, AOC, Kamala Harris, now Zoran Mamdani, at the camera and calling that social justice is just not a reliable vote getter anymore, nor should it be. I think that many Black and brown voters, formerly reliably Democratic, were deeply insulted by the Harris campaign. I think that the recoiling of many Black and brown, including Latino voters, away from the spectacle of illegal immigration policies that obviously hand corporations serf-level workers at the expense of these voters' own jobs is a revulsion that is being felt across the country. It will be fascinating to see how these new Republicans find traction or don't in this new fractured landscape. In Clark and in Caro, and in contrast in Mamdani, we see a battle that is a Rorschach test for the whole country. Then there is the fact that the Democratic leadership essentially abandoned the issues of the first responders of New York. That is also a huge big deal and a major self-inflicted wound. This betrayal should also go down in history, and it should also be a turning point electorally. I met many of the firefighters, cops, and teachers who had been laid off of work in 2021 for not taking the experimental injection when I spoke at a rally to support them. 91% of the first responders in New York City took the experimental injection. The ones who refused, as noted above, lost access to their jobs, their income, their seniority, their benefits. In the lockdown years, I met Michael Caine, the charismatic and hardworking organizer of Teachers for Choice, a laid-off Long Island educator. I met firefighter Sophie Medina, an amazing young woman, a mom of two, a courageous firefighter, a fighter for human rights, the kind of superstar role model New York City would champion in ordinary, sane times, beautiful and strong and principled. In 2021, her body, as well as her colleagues' bodies, which they put into danger for our sakes every single day, was considered by the city to be worth nothing. And now I will show you Sophie Medina. I will share Sophie Medina with you. Here we go. That's Sophie Medina. And she was captured in that image right before the vaccination deadline for New York City workers, and she was facing being kicked out of her job. That's another image of Sophie Medina in her firefighting equipment and uniform. Firefighters resisted this injustice against them all. They protested outside Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence, against the mandate. They bore signs reading, quote, "Essential heroes aren't disposable." And there you can see the firefighters. And here you can see an open letter to New York City Mayor Eric Adams asking him to rehire New York City workers fired during COVID. It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. And there's Sophie Medina again, Tremel Thompson, whom I've met as well, Jamel Hawley. They are still not reinstated. It's just unbelievable. I mean, literally unbelievable. I was upset at their plight. I was moved to have had the chance to do what I could to help, because New York's first responders have been an important part of my and of my family's lives in the city. When I got back to Manhattan a few days after 9/11, believe it or not, I had to take a cab from Canada because all the flights were grounded. I re-entered a devastating scenario. Of course, the air was thick with the stench of powdered bodies. There is no other way to say it. People's ashes seeped into every air conditioner. People's ashes lay on surfaces. The city mourned the firefighters who had so bravely run into burning and collapsing buildings, even though everyone who could get out was running in the opposite direction. At Squad 18, across the street from where we lived, there was eventually a plaque commemorating the lost 9/11 firefighters. For years, we remembered in New York City what we owed to the firefighters. See, it's happening again. Whenever I speak at a first responders event, I almost cry. That is because I was a single mom for 12 years. And the firefighters were right across the street. We could see them. Though I had relationships at various times, I did not have a man in the house whose primary role was to protect my children physically if, God forbid, there were a physical emergency. That is a vulnerability that goes beyond most human vulnerabilities. But I never felt unsafe, and my kids never felt unsafe. Why was that? Because I'm sorry, it just always makes me cry. Like, just all those years of looking out the window and putting, after I'd put my kids to bed and being so grateful that Squad 18 was there and knowing that we were safe. Because there was Squad 18 awake or ready to wake whenever we went to sleep. And I knew, and the children knew, that Squad 18 would keep us safe. Down at Squad 18, as the years passed and my children grew up, we would watch the pile of flowers grow every year on September 11th. People who knew the lost firefighters and those who did not, but who understood what they had been to our city, our neighborhood, would pass by to pay their respects and gently lay a bouquet of white daisies or bright yellow chrysanthemums onto the pile. The families of the lost firefighters would congregate outside Squad 18 on September 11th every year and see old friends, remember their loved ones, and no doubt reminisce. You saw the widows. My kids grew, and the lost firefighters' kids grew. I thought of the families. It's not only the first responders, but their families too, who are heroes. The wives and even the older children know that when dad or mom rushes out to the sound of sirens, the firefighters are putting their bodies at risk for the sake of other people's wives and children, and that the parents may never come back. I got to know the firefighters, as I say, from 2021 to the present. And they are different from most people. They are, I'll just say it, better than most people. They are modest and humble and funny and low-key, but they are also slightly Christ-like. They have that quality that people have who put themselves into harm's way for others' sake. These people choose to risk themselves for others. How many of us do that? How many of us would do that? In the battle unfolding now in New York City, we will see what the Democratic Party really prizes. We will see if the Republican Party can really grow and change and include new gifts and perspectives and talents. We will see in the candidates and parties' treatment of the first responders and teachers if the city has a memory at all, if the city has a heart at all. And we will see if something new, something possibly lasting, a different voice, a different alignment may be emerging from the betrayal and the loss and the chaos. And I will show you the last image in this essay. And that's just an image of New York City firefighters face to face with a typical night, an inferno in the Bronx, where they're trying to get living people out of a burning building. Okay, that's my essay, everybody. Let's see. What are people wanting to share about this essay? That's interesting. Matt Bessemer says something very profound, which is being aghast at the Democrat clown show does not make you a Trump supporter. I happen to have endorsed President Trump because I know that what we have now is better than where we were going. And I, am almost always nonpartisan. So it was quite a big deal for me to have done that. But I really felt like the future of the country was at stake. And it was so unconstitutional what the Democrats had done under the Biden administration in destroying main streets, destroying livelihoods, transfer of wealth, violating people's First Amendment freedom to assemble in lockdowns, and mandating this injection. Totally unconstitutional censorship. The Biden administration had censored me. They had silenced me, deliberately, me, in trying to warn women, you know this if you follow me, a real risk, which women have suffered from by my having been silenced and other voices having been silenced, of menstrual and reproductive damage from these injections. Women are suffering terribly. There's 13 to 20% drop in live births. The Democrats did all of that. So it was impossible for me to support them. Now, Matt is saying something very profound. Athena Clark was a Democrat. She had to re-register to run as a Republican. Louis Caro, I believe, was a Democrat, and he's running as a Republican. I said, you're such an obvious star, your future is bright. Why aren't you running as a Democrat? Why didn't the DNC snap you up? This Columbia University educated, very persuasive, I think Latino Brooklynite. He said they didn't even talk to him. There's a new Republican club in Brooklyn, the Donald J. Trump Republican Club. It's kind of amazing. I mean, and the people who are finding their way to it, many of them are lifelong Democrats. It's not that, I was a lifelong Democrat. There's nothing partisan about the fact that millions of people could not bring themselves to support this agenda. I just in this essay read to you some of the planks in the current Democratic, the current DNC platforms. Who can support them? Who thinks they're a good idea? You have to be literally insane to think that those things, defunding the police, having men beat up women and calling that sport, putting adult men in women's locker rooms and women's prisons with survivors of sexual assault, right? Like, who thinks that's a good idea? Who thinks that that's even justice? These things are not justice. Mandating the first responders. How can anyone justify that, right? That's not what the Democratic Party has historically been. That's not what our greatest presidents and elected officials stood for. Like, Daniel Patrick Moynihan would not find a home in today's Democratic Party. And that's not a partisan observation. It's just saying something I don't even fully understand. I honestly don't understand it. As a former political consultant, it doesn't make sense to me that you would voluntarily choose policies so deranged. And that really has led me to believe that there's something else going on, some other agenda to kind of destroy the United States, or to create a kind of, well, as you see, massive immigration and people working for, pennies and gutting good paying jobs, sending industry overseas. That's a globalist agenda. That's not an American agenda. So one party is supporting that and one party isn't. And so I think labels are ridiculous. But I think I'll just step back and take myself out of it. I think it's very, very interesting and newsworthy that these two young people, an African-American woman or a Caribbean-American woman and a Hispanic-American man, but just like very talented, bright people, whatever their background, had to re-register because they just couldn't run as Democrats. And look at Athena Clark's big issue. Reinstate and compensate. You can't run as a Democrat if you care about the first responders and getting them their jobs back and getting them their retirement back. It is an urgent issue, you guys. It is not an abstract issue. It's not like, oh, what's the price of eggs going to be? As urgent as that is, this is about real heroes, thousands of them who answered the call to public service. It's not like random video gamers or whatever. It's people who step forward to keep New Yorkers safe, right? And to teach your kids, if you live in New York or the boroughs, they need their jobs back, right? They need their retirement back. They need their tenure back. They need their seniority back. They are not able to feed their kids. They're working 6 jobs. They have medical bills. I mean, it's urgent. Okay, these are real human beings, and I really care about them, and you should too. So I've shared with you my essay. I want to share with you one more thing, which is Athena Clark's website right there. And again, I want to disclose we are accepting Athena Clark's sponsored ads on Daily Clout, and we're proud to do it. But I also think that this is a very newsworthy, important campaign. And she is a teacher and she is a mom. And more important, her goal is reinstate and compensate. And she's like one of the very, very, very few candidates who is calling for the reinstatement of the fired first responders. So there's going to be a citywide town hall on July 31st, which is tonight. In 45 minutes from 6 to 7 p.m. And we're going to live stream it. You can watch it on Daily Clout. And it's a virtual event. So you can get the link right there and we'll put it on this podcast. And it's going to cover community updates, answer questions, and basically present her agenda. And there's going to be a family fest and fundraiser on August 9th. And that is an event at a venue to be determined. And you can sign up for that meetup. And I encourage you to do it if you're in the New York area, if you're in Brooklyn, certainly. But whether you're in Brooklyn, whether you're someone who can vote for Athena to represent you, you can donate to her. And I'm going to click the donate button right there. I don't know if you can see that. Let me share my screen. The tech of this is so compelling. Let's see. Can you see that now? Can you see it now? Maybe you can't. Well, just go and take a look. And you'll see that it's contribute.nycvotes.org. And you can contribute whatever. And if you're a New York City resident, if you contribute, there's matching funds, right? So if you contribute $25, it is matched by the city for $50. If you contribute $200, it's matched by the city to make it $400. And this is very important because this is not a candidate, she's a teacher. She's not Zohran Mamdani. She doesn't have, a luxury estate. So if you want someone to represent the firefighters, the police, the teachers, and to represent health freedom, your right to not be forced to do things with your body, whether you live in New York. If you live in New York, it's very important because then she gets the matching funds. And if you don't live in New York, it's still very, very, very important if you want to show that a grassroots support can help a candidate who cares about health freedom, who cares about our firefighters, our police, our teachers, our EMTs, get justice. Whatever you can contribute makes a huge difference. I donated. So I just want to tell you, really encourage you to take that action step and take it as fast as you can, right? Because this is a hard fought battle. And she's up against really entrenched interests. Like, I've learned something very interesting, which is Uber is is behind a lot of the existing elected officials in Brooklyn. Why? Because they want to turn all of Brooklyn into an Uber, friendly borough, essentially, and they're getting rid of parking places. They're making it hard for people to have their own cars. They're certainly making it hard for anyone who's not an Uber driver to use the Brooklyn streets. So Uber is a gigantic corporation, which is also a surveillance corporation. I use them. They're super convenient, but I'm also worried that they want more and more and more of my personal information every time I take an Uber. Well, they're the ones who are funding some of the existing city council members in Brooklyn. So Louis Caro and Athena Clark are not that. They are not funded by these ginormous corporations. So they really need your help if you care about these issues. All right, let's see what other people are saying. Without the lockdowns you supported, this is an argument, there would have been no push for mask vax coercion. People are arguing in the comments. Oh, that's very nice. Elaine Lang is speaking up for me. It's funny how worked up people are in the comments. Understandable. I'm worked up. And she's defending me and saying she, meaning I, woke up and saw the Democratic Party walked away from her, not the other way around. That's very true. She's for goodness and truth, neither of which have a political affiliation. Thank you. And what could be more good and more true than the fact that we owe our first responders basic human decency and support and representation? And wherever you are, think about your police, think about your firefighters, think about the people who come get you in the ambulance, the EMTs. If you have a heart attack, or if you pour boiling water on yourself or on a child by accident, these people help us every day. We can't let them be abandoned like this. We can't. And we have the chance to really show the power the way, the last election did, that it's not going to be business as usual. They don't get to just slot another pretty face into the machine and make a lot of pretty promises and then abandon people and destroy their lives. We're not going to stand for it. At least that's why I'm so passionate about this. Let's see. It's interesting. There's so much criticism and attack in the comments. I don't usually have that. It suggests to me that there are some eyes on this podcast and on these candidates. Howard Turner doesn't like me at all. Ha 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 ha. A grifter who saw the opportunity to grift off the ignorant right. More like, well, that in a comment shows why I'm much more comfortable with conservatives right now than with liberals. Conservatives or independents tend to be much nicer, but you can think what you want. What I'm doing today is giving my all to New York City's first responders because they kept me and my kids safe. It's that simple. They kept me and my kids safe. And if if you're a single mom or dad, if you are disabled, if you're going to be elderly someday, we don't spend our whole lives being invulnerable. You may be invulnerable now, but there could be a time when you're in a wheelchair or on crutches. There could be a time when you get very sick suddenly and don't know why, and you need help. Well, who do you think comes to get you? It's the first responders, right? If you're mugged, if you're attacked, if you're stabbed, it's the police. I'm saying these things over and over, but I need you to pay attention. I need you to think about it. I'm so upset that the New York City bravest and finest are being cast aside as if they have no importance, in a city that lived through 9/11, right? In a city that memorialized them, spun endless. The Bush administration made endless political hay out of the courage of the first responders in New York City. And now this is how we treat them. And I also want to challenge Mamdani. I would I've interviewed Athena Clark. I've interviewed Louis Chiaro. I am opening my door to interview Mamdani and to have him tell me what he plans to do to reinstate and compensate the first responders. Come on, guys, open door, or for him to debate these electeds, or to debate Michael Caine of Teachers for Choice, or these candidates. We have to put this issue front of center, you guys. And also, it's not just a New York thing. What happens in New York ripples across the country. So I'm sure you have first responders in your city who need someone to speak up for their rights, especially in the wake of mandates. So if you raise this issue, if you share this video, if you contribute to Athena Clark, it does help this issue get a ripple effect in other cities. So James Green, I love James Green. He's one of our regular commentators, says scarier than ill-tempered immigrants is the banality of things like organ harvesting from mistakenly diagnosed patients and the ceaseless debate and controversy to none effect. I agree that it's equally scary. And I think that, that's one reason I voted for the MAGA Maha Alliance. RFK Jr. is talking about organ harvesting, which is a real thing. They really are taking organs from living people who are, not dead. The term brain dead was coined. That's what James Green is referring to. And it is an eye opener. People don't know that. The New York Times hasn't told them that. So, the Biden administration didn't warn people about that. So that's a very big issue, quite terrifying. And it brings up bigger concerns, like metaphysical concerns, like, are we living in, kind of a satanic reality? Because who would do that? But that's the direction the DNC is going in, more abortion, later abortions. I'm pro-choice, but, the later and later abortions, and then the organ harvesting from those fetuses, that's one of those. I could have added that example to the list of it was sane and now it's gone to an insane degree that no one can support if they have a heart. Well, that's very interesting. Maybe I'll end with this. Citizen 77, I love your handle, says, lifelong Democrat here and they needed to be stopped. Go Trump. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'd love it if you would say more about that, Citizen 77. Because much more, interesting and compelling when people who were lifelong Democrats say, I couldn't do it, or defend what I just shared with you, you guys. If you're committed Democrats and you're supporting Zoran Mamdani or supporting, the challengers to this administration, supporting these policies, tell me why. Why is it okay to have men beating up women in sports? Why? Why is it okay to have teenage boys in teenage girls' locker rooms? Why? That, you don't need to do that to be pro-LGBTQ legal rights. It's not necessary. Why defund the police, right? Why harvest organs from people who are alive? Why do it? Why bring in 30 million people who are breaking the law and taking jobs from lower income people of color, right? If you're so right on, why is that okay? So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not trying to argue with a straw man or woman. Come on this show, come into the comments and tell me why these policies are okay. And anything else? Oh, that's interesting. Raina Fortini says, I worked briefly for the film company that distributed Mira Nair's first or second film, Salam Bombay, wonderful movie. Had no idea Mira Nair was his mom. Wow, that's crazy, right? Most people had no idea. You know why? Because she's a legit celebrity. Like, she's a legit jet-setting, gorgeous, elegantly dressed, fabulous jet-set celebrity. And he isn't trotting that out, really, because Mamdani is representing himself in his shalwar kameez, right, which who wears to the New York State Assembly. No disrespect to people wearing salwar kameezes, the, Ugandan or Pakistani Muslim kind of pajama, basically, outfit. He's representing himself as a man of the people, and he is more privileged than the average Kennedy. Like, seriously, it is crazy. And he's the son of a genuinely famous member of the Hollywood elite, the global film elite is Mira Nair. And I love her movies. They're wonderful movies, but that is not a man of the people in his background. And I just think it's very, very interesting that, he's not trotting around very much with his mom, to his hardworking immigrant mom who is, back in, making food in the kitchen. That's not Mira Nair. She's trotting around the world receiving awards. God bless her. She deserves them. But let us not pretend that Zoran Mamdani grew up in a normal, working class or lower middle class background in Brooklyn or New York the way that these candidates did. He has no idea what it's like to be a working class New Yorker. He's not a working class New Yorker. He's a Bowdoin kid. All right, that's it for me. You've heard what I have to say. Again, remember those matching funds if you go to 2025athenaclark.com. Make that donation. I really recommend it. It really matters. These candidates are, every single penny is accounted for. They live or die. Their campaigns live or die on those little donations. And if you could possibly afford, let's see, make sure I get it right. If you can possibly afford a small donation, a big donation, I'm going to share the screen again. There it is. It's 2025clarkcitycouncil.com. 2025clarkcitycouncil.com. And again, reinstate and compensate. And that means for our first responders. So please make a donation to her on behalf of the first responders of New York City, in recognition of your own first responders, if you possibly can afford it. And if not, just please spread the word if you're persuaded or moved by anything I've shared with you today. And again, we'll be publishing her campaign's sponsored content on Daily Clout. So we'll be updating you with her events and her speeches, and also just generally keeping you posted about this issue of the first responders. Will they get their jobs back? If it's up to us, the answer is yes, but we need a groundswell of support. Again, if you care, I am not the New York Times. Amazingly, I have about the same number of viewers a month as the New York Times has subscribers to their paper edition. But which is kind of incredible. Independent media is outstripping legacy media. However, I don't have their revenue. So it's all donations for Outspoken and Daily Clout as well, donations and subscriptions. So if you care about the coverage of issues like this, candidates like these, things you won't read about in your local legacy newspaper, you won't hear about on CNN, I need your help. So support me and my amazing team at Daily Clout as well. You can go to dailyclout.io and donate or subscribe, or come over to Substack. My Substack is Outspoken, and donate or subscribe there. And I will keep you informed and hopefully keep beating the drum to get those first responders their jobs back and some leadership representing them in Brooklyn's City Council. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Really, thanks for listening.